Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. The murder of a Georgia beauty queen, Tara Grinstead.
There were several reference samples from individuals that did not match the evidence that were tested.
Will DNA found on an item at the crime scene be allowed in the coming murder trial? And new details revealed in day 5 of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard.
What was your understanding of why Mr. Depp was late occasionally on the set of Pirates 5?
My understanding was he was having arguments with Amber.
But first, Johnny Depp himself takes the stand.
Today is the first opportunity that I've been able to speak about this case.
We're live at the Fairfax County Courthouse to break down the captivating testimony. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. The star witness takes the stand in a trial that's captivating the world. Johnny Depp himself testifies on Tuesday in the multi-million-dollar defamation suit against Amber Heard. Law&Crime Network's Jesse Weber was inside the courtroom when Depp took the stand. He joins us now live in Fairfax, Virginia, to break down his testimony so far.
Yeah, hey, Brian, even if you didn't know that Johnny Depp was about to take the stand, you would know something was going on, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there was such an increased court presence outside the courtroom, and also one of the strange things that never happened so far before in this trial is they locked the doors going into that courtroom. They actually had to use a key card, and the last measure of security that they took, they removed everybody's water bottles from the courtroom in case they might throw something at Johnny Depp. Now, when it was announced that he would take the stand, they announced his name. There were some murmurs in the courtroom, and then, Brian, I kid you not, complete silence when he was speaking. You could hear a pin drop. The jurors were watching him like hawks. Amber Heard was focused on him, not showing much emotion. This is his time. This is his time, the first take to tell his side of the story about what happened. He went everything from his abusive childhood to how his stardom, to how his life changed after Pirates of the Caribbean, and how he met and courted Amber Heard. But of course, the main question is why? Why did he file this lawsuit? Why air his dirty laundry in front of the whole world? Well, that is a question that he answered when he began his testimony. Take a look.
I had to wait for my opportunity to address the charges, which were criminal charges, and they just weren't true. So I felt the responsibility of clearing the record as the only way that I could get to the point where I could speak has really taken this full 6 years, and it's been 6 years of trying times. It's very strange when one day you're Cinderella, so to speak, and then in 0.6 seconds you're Quasimodo. And I didn't deserve that, nor did my children, nor did the people who have believed in me for all these years. I didn't want any of those people to believe that I had done them wrong or lied to them or that I was a fraud. I pride myself on honesty. I pride myself on truth. Truth is the only thing I'm interested in. Other lies will get you nowhere, but lies build upon lies and build upon lies. It's too much to cover. I'm obsessed with the truth.
What do you think of Depp's why? At the end of the day, do you think he should have brought this case?
Well, look, I think for him, in order to sell this story, and remember the story is that Amber Heard publicly lied about him, and then he's also claiming that he was the victim, that is a story that only he can sell. That is, and look, he's an actor, but at the same time, he's a great storyteller. And so this is his case that he's bringing, and he feels after this week, and I have to mention the testimony that we've heard so far from key witnesses who said they've never observed him abusing Amber Heard and never observed any injuries on her part. This is now the cherry on top. Obviously, there are going to be more witnesses after him, but he needs to come forward and tell this. And so far, he is trying every which way to convince this jury that he is telling the truth and she is not.
Jesse, it's interesting you bring it up that way because I'm listening to Depp speak and he sounds very purposeful when he speaks, but I've seen comments run the gambit of theories. What do you think of the way in which Johnny Depp is speaking?
He's careful. He's very soft-spoken. He's careful. He's deliberate in his word choice. He's taking a long time sometimes to explain certain points. But I'm telling you, the jury is sitting very close to him, and they're not taking their eyes off of him. They're not looking to the side. They're listening to every word that he has to say. And you know what? I think that's honest. I think he's coming off quite credible because he says, I'm not one of my characters who can do a million words a minute. This is who I am, and I'm here to tell you who Johnny Depp is.
Now, Jesse, while many are spellbound by Depp on the stand, you're looking at this as a lawyer and a journalist. You mentioned to me there may have been 2 times that he slipped up on the stand. What were they?
Okay, so number one, that whole first speech that he gave, he never mentioned that Washington Post article from 2018 once. That is the purpose of his defamation lawsuit. He talked about statements that were made, but he never tied it back to the defamation, to the Washington Post article. I think that's a big problem. And number two, he focused so much on saying that he never physically abused Amber Heard, but he didn't quite address the psychological, mental, or verbal abuse. And in fact, when he was talking about his mother being abusive to him, he said, the verbal and psychological abuse was sometimes worse than the actual physical abuse. I know that's something that Amber Heard's lawyers are going to jump on him later on.
All right, Jesse, you promised that you would surprise me. You didn't tell me about this before. I am surprised. This is interesting. I think it's going to come up on cross-examination later on in this case, but of course we'll see if those points get hit on. Thank you. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a cold case will soon have its day in court. We look ahead to the coming trial of Ryan Duke. But first, our coverage continues of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial. When we come back, more from Depp on the stand. Welcome back. We're sticking with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation case out of Virginia, as Depp took the stand on Tuesday. Johnny Depp told jurors how an abusive childhood affected his relationship with Heard.
In the beginning of my relationship with Miss Heard, there was, from what I recall and what I remember, she was it was as if she was too good to be true. She was attentive, she was loving, she was smart, she was kind, she was funny, she was understanding, and we had many things in common, certain blues music and, well, music, literature, things of that nature. So for that year or year and a half, it was amazing. Within a year and a half, she had become this another person almost.
We're joined today by criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona, co-host Terry Austin, and once again, Jesse Weber, live from Fairfax, Virginia, but with no alpacas this time. Jesse, talk to us about the story Depp gave about his mother and father. Did it seem to mirror his relationship with Heard?
It was so important. He was basically telling the jury without actually telling them I am my father. Amber Heard is my mother. I am the abused man who doesn't end up then fighting back and actually resorting to physical violence, but deciding to leave confrontations, whether to leave the marriage, to leave the room. And that's what he wants to leave the jury with, that he is a kind, shy, introverted person who would never do the things that Amber Heard is accusing him of doing, and that he is just the victim of abuse himself, psychological abuse, verbal abuse, and physical abuse. So it was an important moment for him to start off his testimony by ultimately putting that image in the minds of the jury.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jesse. As you said that, I'm watching the video we have there of Depp, and his shoulders are like this, and it seems just like that as you described. Bernarda, how do we gauge the credibility of a man who made even me believe he escaped an island on a raft made of turtles? Depp's still talking about his past, but how's he doing so far?
So I think Johnny Depp is doing an excellent job on the stand. He is remaining patient. He is taking his time in answering the questions. He has all of us hanging by every word. We're waiting for the next word to come out. That's how he has us, and we're not even inside the courtroom. So just imagine the people in the courtroom. Just imagine those 7 jurors that ultimately have to make that decision in this case. So Johnny Depp has already gave us a lot of background of who he is, what his upbringing was like, to put everything into perspective. And I think that is weighing well with the jury, but still we have to see how he hangs doing cross-examination, because that's the most telling.
Yeah, Tara, I'm kind of thinking this more legally now as we go on. The standard for Depp is pretty high because he's a public figure. So do you think Depp's legal team is trying to win in this court, the court of public opinion, or both?
Oh, I definitely think they're trying to win in this court and the court of public opinion. Obviously, they're trying to tell a story. As Jesse mentioned, they're telling the story about his very difficult childhood, how his mother abused his father, and how he wanted a different life. He became addicted to opioids, but he's not a monster, and that all along, we know that Heard has exaggerated the truth. And so I do think they're trying to prove the defamation. Obviously, you have to show that the statements were false, that they were public, and that they were stated, and that there was malice because he's a public figure. And I think he has mentioned some of that. She knew they weren't true. We'll probably see some more of that as we go along.
Yeah, I'm expecting Depp to be on the stand for at least 2, maybe 3 days. I think we're going to see a lot of him and this case as we continue. Jesse, thank you as always for the great reporting there in Virginia. Hope to see you soon. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a beloved Georgia beauty queen and teacher murdered. Years later, the accused killer is set to stand trial. Plus, those closest to Johnny Depp take the stand, what they say happened between Depp and Heard. Welcome back. We're continuing our coverage in the multi-million-dollar Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation lawsuit. Before Depp took his stand on Tuesday, jurors heard from Sean Bett and a member of Depp's security team. Bett laid out the abuse he witnessed in the relationship.
She was crying. This was at the point when the arguing was taking place quite frequently. And I was telling her, I said, Amber, this can't continue. You guys are either going to kill each other or you're going to be in jail. And, with tears and everything, she says, but I love him and I'm not going to lose him. And I says, but you guys can't keep doing this. I overheard her saying to him, he's a fat you, Johnny, and you too, Sean, at one time when, she went to throw a water bottle or a plastic cup down the stairs and it bounced kind of in Johnny's direction, but I ended up getting him and we, got out of there as soon as possible.
At any point during Ms. Heard's and Mr. Depp's relationship, did you ever see any injuries on Ms. Heard?
No.
How about on Mr. Depp?
Yes. I saw another injury around, would have been March of 2015. He had a swollen kind of cheekbone eyelid.
Jurors also heard from Keenan Wyatt, a friend of Depp's who also works as a sound engineer on many of his movies. Wyatt told jurors about an incident involving Heard on a flight from Boston to Los Angeles.
What, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Heard on the flight?
Well, at one point I went up to her and said something to the effect of, you know, he cares about you. And all of a sudden she snapped and started yelling at me, "How dare you talk to me? Get away from me." You know, so I went back to a seat and minded my own business.
When she said those things to you, would you describe the tone of her voice if you remember it?
She was abruptly loud. It was a quiet plane. All of a sudden it got very loud.
You get on the airplane and it's your testimony that Ms. Heard had a bad tone of voice with Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
She had a bad tone of voice with me.
Okay. In fact, wasn't Mr. Depp saying pretty horrible things to Ms. Heard?
I don't recall that.
Bernarda, in order for Depp to win, he has to prove Heard's claims are flat out false. So far, the testimony has been about Heard abusing him. But if she gets up on the stand and says that he hit her even just once, what does that do for Depp's claim and his reputation?
Exactly, Brian. And that's going to be the issue in this case. The good thing is, well, not the good thing, but since both of them are county suing each other, they're also pointing the finger at each other. So they're both saying that one of them is lying. So if one of them is lying, then the claims can't stand true because, of course, the defense to any defamation case is truth. The problem is that this jury is not going to be able to determine whose credibility should I believe. Should I believe Johnny Depp? Should I believe Amber Heard? I just don't know. So where does that leave the jury? And that's going to be the huge task that this jury is going to be tasked with. Because if just one juror believes that, oh, one of these incidents actually took place, Amber Heard was actually hit at least one time, then there is truth to her article.
All right. Now, Terry, at one point, Law and Crime had over 100,000 people watching the trial, most of them calling for justice for Johnny. As we hear about Heard's abuse to him, could this case shed light on men being victims of domestic violence, maybe a him too movement?
Well, I'm not sure about a him too movement. Obviously, the number of abuse cases by men against women still far outnumber the reverse of that. But what this case is demonstrating to everyone is that abuse has no gender. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. They are seeing that abuse can be done. And here we are seeing that Amber has abused Depp emotionally and mentally and even physically.
Yeah, I will agree the numbers are there. I'm not sure if that does or doesn't create a movement, but from what I understand, the reporting of men as to domestic violence is heavily underreported. So I'd be curious to see if this brings this issue to light. When we come back, the murder of Georgia beauty queen and teacher Tara Grinstead, what both sides discussed at a recent hearing for Ryan Duke, and what you could expect at his coming trial. Welcome back. Nearly 20 years after the death of a Georgia beauty queen and beloved teacher, her accused murderer will soon stand trial. Investigators believe Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes are responsible for Grinstead's murder. The pair are not related. Prosecutors say the two were former students of Grinstead years before she went missing. After her disappearance in 2005, the case just went cold. Duke and Dukes were both taken into custody in 2017 when a tip led to their arrest. In 2019, Bo Dukes was tried and found guilty in connection to Grinstead's death. Ryan Duke is expected to stand trial next month. Ahead of the trial, Duke appeared in court this week, where both sides discussed a latex glove found on Grinstead's property after she went missing. Prosecutors argue the glove has Duke's DNA on it, while defense attorneys say the Georgia Bureau of Investigation did not follow protocol when collecting the DNA.
I have not withheld any documents or documentation associated with generation of reports in this case.
And the nonconformity that you've discussed, in looking at those, it did not affect any of the original testing back in 2017 that identified Ryan Duke as the majority contributor to the DNA on the glove, correct?
Correct.
A judge made no ruling on whether the DNA on the glove will be allowed in the trial. It's expected to be a contentious debate at the coming court proceedings. Jury selection in Ryan Duke's case is expected to begin on May 2nd. Make sure to stay with the Law and Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage of the highly anticipated trial. Bernarda, as we listen to arguments about this glove and taking the facts as we know them so far, how important is this glove to the case? Is it O.J. Simpson glove important or glove in the middle of Jamaica important?
It's really important and crucial to the case for the prosecution. You got to think the only two things that are really connecting Ryan Duke to this murder is his statement, which he says was a lie, and also this glove that ties him to the scene. So if they can get themselves away from this glove, this will be a huge dent in the prosecution's case, because normally what jurors like to believe is things that can't change, and that's having to deal with DNA, dealing with the science.
Absolutely. Now, Terry, if the collection of the DNA didn't follow protocol, isn't that for the jury to decide if that evidence is believable or not? Or should the judge decide if this DNA comes in at all?
You know what? In my mind, Brian, there's no question that this is the type of evidence that the judge should absolutely admit. When he's trying to determine whether or not to admit evidence, he has to look at whether it's more probative or prejudicial. This is not prejudicial. This is the type of evidence that a jury needs to determine and look at whether or not it is credible. And what they're going to do is listen to those witnesses. And if the witnesses said that the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, if they did not follow protocol, then in fact, the jury can say, listen, that evidence is not as important, or it is not something that I am going to take into consideration when I'm trying to decide this case. So it's definitely something that the jury should see. I think that they can look at all of that. They can make their own determination, and we'll probably get experts as well.
Yeah, I can see the defense making some very good arguments on that. I know we've made them in the past. Thank you both, and thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.